Hey, this is Peter Stroud with Close Enemies and Sheryl Crow in the Real Lowdown. I'm enjoying tremendously talking with my pals Eric and Jeff on the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunted, and with me in Dogbow Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our new sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We would like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. And tonight's guest is
Peter Stroud. Got a new project, Close Enemies, and he's also works with Sheryl Crow.
Yeah, absolutely. Close Enemies has a new album that's probably going to be released, we're thinking, in November, right? Yeah. An actual physical copy. So, hey, fantastic interview. Let's get to it.
All right, good night.
Good night. Peter, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Jeff Unteed.
Peter, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Eric. It's a pleasure to talk to you both.
We're so excited to have you tonight. Thank you for the correspondence. Thank you for your willing to participate. Let's get into this. So you, along with Tony Brock, Tom Hamilton, Trace Foster, and Chase Hampton, have come together to form the supergroup Close Enemies. Can you talk a little bit more about your journey into the band?
Yes, well, it started with Trace Foster, who has been sort of the guitar tech of the stars for years. He made a career of it, working with a lot of great people. And the first time I met Trace was on a session with Ed Rowland of Collective Soul.
Oh, cool.
And he had hired Trace, and that was years back. And we immediately hit it off. And then as years went on, out of the blue, Trace called me about recording with the band that he was producing, the Letters from Jet. So that transpired, which was great, on and on and on, lead up to current day. He hit me up about putting together a band, making it sort of an all-star. The main thing is he was just ready to get out and play again. He had lived here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live, back in the 80s, played in 80s and 90s, played in bands around here. So he was just ready to bring that back into his life again. And for various reasons, I was all about it with him. So we had worked with friends of ours, some well-known, of just trying to put something together. And then in the process, while he was working with Aerosmith, he had talked to Tom about working on some of Tom's music. Trace brought it up to me and said, hey, you know what? I think the two of us would do well working with him. And I said, well, I think I know just the drummer. which was Tony Brock. I figured that Tom and Tony could hit it off really well. And Tony and I had been looking for some way to play together. We had become fast friends because our wives are longtime friends. And he lives in the Atlanta area. So that was sort of the nucleus of it. Then it was looking for a singer. And we also have a really good songwriter that is part of this whole equation, this guy, Gary Steer, who Trace had played with back in the day. So that's how it all came together. Chasen was one of a few singers that we had talked to, and he was just the perfect fit. To me, he's perfect because he not only has the rock element, but he does have the pop element, which I 100% appreciate. He's all about melody. He's an incredible singer, and I just felt like it was a nice compliment to the band, you know, as opposed to just going 100% down the rock lane.
Fantastic.
Can you talk a little bit more about the dynamic of the songwriting between the group?
Yes. From the get-go, the whole point of this thing was to be I don't want to say democratic, but it was like no idea would be left unturned. So anybody was welcome to bring a song idea in, however fleshed out it might be. And we would see it through. You know, the whole thing is we've all been there, done that, so to speak. And so this thing was meant to be no expectations. Let's just have fun with it. Let's write and make some cool music. And we all have our thoughts on what we would like to present out there, to play out there, and frustrations of what we don't hear out there. And also the reality that as screwed up as the music industry is now, you really do have 100% freedom to put out whatever you want put out.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's how we approach the songwriting. So, you know, the way it has worked is we've figured out that here in Atlanta where I live seemed to be a good meeting point for everybody. Tony brings his electronic drum kit. We set up in my basement. We have, you know, couches and chairs. I roll out the small amps and we play at a comfortable volume, coming up with song ideas, and we'll flesh a song out in the course of a day, maybe 2 songs. Set up microphones, everything's set to record. We throw everything down, and we'll even record a rough go at it. And so, everything that you're hearing so far that we've released was either born out of rehearsal room practices where we come up with the music together in a rehearsal room or here at the house.
Well, that is so cool. Truly organic.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Well, you know, Close Enemies has released a few singles the past few months. Can you talk a little bit more into our listeners about the upcoming actual physical copy of the album?
Yes. That has just been mainly, it's drug out because it's just taken us time to get everything mixed. We have everything recorded, and the first 3 songs I had our buddy Nick Dadia mix, who, I don't know if you're familiar with Nick, but he engineered with Brendan O'Brien, you know, all throughout Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, Bruce Springsteen, you name it, all throughout the years, and then became a producer, mixer in his own right, and has since actually moved to Australia. So he mixed the first 3 songs, and then as we went along, you know, we all had ideas of what we wanted, and Tony definitely has a very defined idea of his sound. I feel I know his sound. We all have production ideas. I, of course, am recording and mixing all the demos, had defined ideas of how I wanted to sound. So I was like, you know what? I really want to take a stab at finishing this, and so far everybody's digging the mixes. I've mixed 2, and I'm mixing the remainder of the songs that we will put out in November.
Oh, exciting. Nice. Yeah, very good.
Well, let's talk a little about the tour. You guys are working on an evening with the Close Enemies. Can you talk a little bit about being on the road and with these guys, and what can fans expect from the shows?
Well, we're back in a van. A minivan at that. You know, what's great, you know, we're always joking about it, you know, because Tom Hamilton especially, you know, is used to a little bit better, and you know, but it just goes back to what drives you in the first place, man. If you love what you're doing, you know, there are ways that you can make the trips comfortable and easy. We make the jumps in between the cities easy. You know, we go out for a long weekend. A Thursday, Friday, Saturday seems to work well for everybody. Fly to the first town, drive between the rest of them, fly home. Easy. Nice. Yeah, easy peasy. Good friends of ours that, you know, of course, Trace's network of techs is, you know, stretches across the country. And we get the best of the best working with us. It's incredible. It's a lot of fun. So, for instance, we have dates coming up next week, and we're playing. These will be a lot of fun because we're playing in Louisville, Kentucky with Tom Kiefer and L.A. Guns.
Yep.
And then the next night, I believe that's in Louisville. I believe the next night is in St. Charles, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. That's with Winger. And then again with Kiefer and L.A. Guns in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Oh, very good.
You know, so those have been great. And then prior to that, we've been doing our own shows. And we play, the majority is original material, and then we do bring out a handful of songs, a small handful of, you know, songs expected, you know, for Aerosmith and Babies, because we all love playing that stuff.
For sure.
Well, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the covers you're looking forward to playing?
You know, well, obviously we play the songs that Tom wrote or played a part with. And because of that, Sick as a Dog, I have always, you know, I was a rock fanatic, you know. I remember where I was when I first, you know, bought and listened to Toys in the Attic and wore it out. You know, even before that, Get Your Wings. I was a kid and had Get Your Wings. And then when Rocks came out. So Sick as a Dog was, you know, I would start with the second side just for that song, you know. So now to be playing it with Tom, come on, you know, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
You know, I already had that guitar part memorized. You know, it was one of the parts I grew up learning how to play, you know.
Very good.
Most recent single, More Than I Could Ever Need, came out August 8th. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe your contributions to some of the singles that have been out?
Yes. So that song was born out of a song that Tom brought to us. And he had the lyrics, for the most part, written. He had a general form, and then we all just got together and hashed out the rest of it and, you know, finalized the arrangement. I think I came up with the hook part, you know, the opening guitar part that ended up being sort of the, you know, guitar line in it. Everybody had something to do with it, you know. Everybody put heads together and just helped finalize the lyrics, you know. Just it really was just another example of somebody bringing their song idea in, and we all see it through to the end.
Oh, very good. Well, you spoke about playing in St. Charles at the Arcada.
Yeah.
Have you ever played that venue before?
I have not, no.
You're going to love it. I just saw the fix there this past May. It's a fantastic venue. You'll want to go back.
Oh, cool.
Very much so. We're going to talk a little bit more about the music business. How do you like this new era in the music business where artists release a multitude of singles before they actually release a full album, or sometimes they don't even release an album at all? Everything is kind of singles-based in this new era in the music business.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
Because everybody has their own kind of perception of what they think works. I think it depends on your audience. You know, we are definitely of the generation that is accustomed to albums. And so that's a good thing and a not so good thing. It's great because, you know, it's just like a book. It's like when somebody writes a book. They just don't put out the chapters and bleed them out,
right?
You know. But in the case of songs are different because of streaming. There's so much music available on a daily basis now that, you know, I think listeners out there are overwhelmed. But the good part of it is there's an audience for everybody out there. You know, it may not be where these, you know, bands, well, that's even wrong too. There are bands born that are, you know, becoming arena acts. They're just in the younger generations, just like when we were growing up or when I was growing up, you know. Now, putting out the singles works for us as a brand new band because it helps keep the attention on us out there.
Oh, yeah.
If you know, because if we put out the whole album all at once, as you've probably noticed, anybody who puts an album out all at once, it has attention for about a week.
Exactly.
And then it disappears, you know. So, but at the same time, people want an album. Our fans want that tangible album, you know, be it just as something they can listen to from start to finish, or to have in, you know, in CD or vinyl form. So, and to me, I want that too. It just makes it feel like, okay, this is a project that, you know, encapsulates everything that we were thinking at that particular time. And it's great to just have it right here where I can listen to it or even better, hold it in my hand.
Absolutely. You know, your thoughts, you know, my parents were a product of the 50s and 60s, and this, you know, their record collection was so many 45s, and it seemed, you know, that was the format back in the 50s and early 60s, was to release as many 45 singles as you possibly can. Obviously, we're in the digital format now, but do you kind of feel like we've kind of, as far as the music business, we've kind of gone in reverse?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it cycles back to that, because you're right. That was the period, 60s, I remember when I was super young, it was all about just buying singles. You know, of course, partially that's all I could afford with my saved up lunch money. But, you know, at the same time, you're right. That was sort of the mindset then. So, yeah, perhaps it's bounced back to that again.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I want to take it back to the 1990s. You started working with Pete Droge and the Sinners. 1996, Find a Door. 1998, Spacey and Shaken. Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration? How you came to work with Pete?
Yes, Brendan O'Brien is how I began playing with Pete, but I had met him prior to then. I worked at a music store at a guitar shop called Atlanta Discount Music. And right down the street, about a half mile down the street, was Southern Tracks, the recording studio where Brendan worked out of. And so, you know, they'd always be coming up to the store to get their stuff, you know, get strings and sticks and whatever they needed, supplies. And so I remember meeting Pete, where Brendan came in with him and said, "Hey, man, here's an artist I'm working with, Pete Droge," and met him at the counter, you know. And then fast forward 6 months later, it turned out the engineer that was working with Brendan, a guy named Russ Fowler, he said, "Hey, man, you're going to dig this record. I think you'll really like this." And he was right. I think it came out in January or so of '95. And it became my favorite album of the year at that point. Then in June, I get a call from Brendan. And he goes, "Hey, man, do you have a passport?" And I just procured a passport back in March. And I went, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, great." He says, "My artist, Pete Droge, have you heard of him?" He had forgotten we had met. And he goes, "He's going to Europe and his guitarist just quit. Would you be interested in going over?" And that's literally how it started. And I said, "Yeah, awesome. I would love to go, but I can't rehearse." And because we were taking our nephew to Disney World. So they sent the tapes. Pete was fine with that. They sent the tapes, and I learned the tapes, and I flew straight from Orlando to Frankfurt for our first show in front of 40,000 people at the Rock am Ring Festival.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Well, you know,
it was a hoot.
You were on his Find a Door and Spacey and Shaken albums. Can you talk a little bit more about getting in the studio and working with Pete? How is he to work with?
Oh, he was great in the fact that, he was a songwriter in the truest sense of the word. He constantly was writing songs, so obviously he had the songs ready to present and play. I just remember us going in, and what I can't remember actually is how much prep we did prior to. We did do some prep. Okay, I do remember now. We did do pre-production. So we recorded in Atlanta. We did the pre-production in Atlanta, where Brendan put us in a rehearsal room. That's right. We went into a rehearsal room, I think, for a couple weeks, and where Pete threw the songs at us. We flesh them out, come up with parts, blah, blah, blah. And then once in the studio, he was still a new artist. So it was, even though the budgets were there, it was a major label deal. Budgets were restrictive, so it was get in and get it done. But we did have a month, from start to finish to do it. And so Brendan and Russ would set up everything. We were all set up in the big room. What was really cool about the way Brendan recorded us is he would set up a PA system in there with monitors. So we all had monitor wedges in front of us, and then he had side fills in the room, and the drums were isolated. But we actually played as a band, and he'd stand in there with us, and we'd go through the songs. And if a song, we get takes down, or if the song hit sort of a stale point, he goes, all right, let's move on to another song. He was Brendan was great about keeping the pace going. A lot of that was due to the time constraints, but it's also because he wanted to capture the spontaneity.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was like, okay, this is how I want to make records right here. This is, it's catching it live. And then, of course, it also gave you time to go home. It was great for me because I lived 10 minutes up the road. So I'd go home and I'd be dreaming up what I'd play as a lead part. And then I'd come in the next day and I'd say, hey, man, I want to throw down a lead part on this song. Okay, what do you got? He would never go, no, we got it. He got, let me hear it, and he'd throw it down.
Fantastic.
Both of those, Find a Door, Spacey, and Shaking, are still just, monumental periods in my career. I just love them. I go back and listen to them a couple times a year.
Well, that brings up a curious question I have for you. In this day and age, you talked about working with close enemies in your basement, recording stuff, and we see a lot of artists, maybe kind of artists now that are recording music in their own home on their iPhones and whatever, what have you, and not getting into the proper studio and recording their music. It seems like the proper studio is kind of being a thing of the past almost. Where's your mindset when it comes to recording?
You're definitely hitting on something that I believe future generations will never have the chance to experience.
Yeah.
And that's where you're in a proper acoustically designed studio where you can get the drum sounds and the microphones being used and everything going through an analog board. Even if it's going down to Pro Tools, this stuff was going, the earlier stuff was still tape, but then later on, it would even still run through the 2-inch machine just to get the analog sound going into Pro Tools, in later days.
Yeah.
Just having that experience is something that I think, a lot of generations are going to miss. But at the same time, I got to say, it's incredible what you can reproduce with the gear that we have. And so what we did with our record, I pride myself. I can get some really good guitar sounds in my basement. It's just luck of the situation. I've got a good sounding room. I know how to mic up the amps. I can even do room miking on them, the whole bit. That part's easy as far as I'm concerned. What we did with Tony's drums is we went into Peter Frampton's studio in Nashville. After the songs were done, we went back and he recorded his acoustic drums in there.
Oh.
So at least we had the advantage of getting his drums down that way. The guitars, I have good mic pre's and stuff like that, so I can get a good sound. But yeah, man, there is nothing like recording in a proper recording studio.
Wow. Well said.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Jeff.
In 2002, maybe, I think it was, you co-founded 65 Amps, a company manufactures guitar and bass amplifiers. Can you talk a little bit about that endeavor?
Yes. That started with my friend Dan Bull, a really good friend. I was his best man at his wedding. We had met here in Atlanta back in the, I guess, late 80s when he joined a band down here. But, by that time, around 2002, maybe a little later, actually things really kicked up with us, or I believe around 2004, because it was, by that time, stage volumes were coming down more and more. And I had been using with Pete, then with Sheryl in my first years with her, and with John Henley, my 50-watt Marshall combo, 212 combo, and a super reverb. And the volume kept coming down. Then the attenuators came down. And then it was like, man, I wish I could find some smaller amps that would get my sound that I was comfortable with. And I stumbled on an 18-watt Marshall, somebody who had reproduced one. And I was like, wow, there it is. You can stand in front of this, and it's got the sound. So I was telling Dan Bull about it. Fast forward a month or so, he goes, hey, man, I'm building an 18-watt Marshall. I said, I had no idea you could do that kind of stuff. And he says, well, I really can't, but I'm going to do it anyway.
That's awesome.
And then fast forward another couple months or so, he had a buddy, he calls me, he's got a buddy that's giving him the money to build 5 prototypes to take to a NAMM show. That's how driven he was.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to be his artist, per se. And I said, nah, I want to do better than that. By that time, I had learned how to work on my own amps to, restore my old vintage amps and so forth and customize them. And I said, I want to be a part of this. So I became a partner with him, and we designed the amps together. That's how it started. We just happened to just come right in at the beginning of the real push of the whole boutique amp thing.
Very
Super cool.
All right, so the question that probably everybody wants to hear is your relationship with Sheryl Crow. You met her during your time with Pete Droge. You joined her band in 1998 for the Globe Sessions tour. To this day, you still work with her. Can you give our listeners an insight to your partnership with Sheryl all these years later?
Yes. Well, yes, she's incredible to work with. She is incredibly driven. I think you've probably seen a common thread with a lot of successful musicians is they do not let the dust settle on them. And that is her in a nutshell. I mean, even when she said she wanted to take some time off, she'd end up not taking time off. Constantly working. And here I am 27 years later working with her. She is a good blend of creative artist. She herself also was constantly writing. Her musical background is incredibly varied. Started out in the clubs, cover bands, just like I did, and others. And her musical upbringing from her parents was, had a wide variety of influences. So I consider her sort of a chameleon. She's one of those that can pull off anything authentically really well. Man, here we are. We're still at it. We had that band, that general band that from when I first joined at the end of 98, held together for about 11 or 12 years.
Wow. Yeah.
She took a turn, did an album with Doyle Bramhall III, and used the studio band for the tour for that record, which was fine. attempted to put that former band back together, but by that time everybody had splintered off, where a few of the players were playing with Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds and so forth. I had put together a band as another original project called Big Hat. And at that time, Sheryl had moved to Nashville. All my buddies were based out of Nashville. I said, I've got your band. I've got just a band that can pull off what you're doing with this new album that had country type influences, being that, she had signed to Warner Nashville. And so I knew that group, which includes Audley Freed, Fred Eltringham, Robert Kearns. Robert and Audley had come from Cry of Love.
Yes.
Fred had been in various bands, including the Wallflowers. They had done a lot of sideman gigs, but so they're all incredible players. And then a year later, Jen Gunderman came in, Audley's wife, as keyboardist. And so we still have this band together to this day. It's great. It's just another dream band.
Fantastic.
Especially playing with Audley.
I want to talk a little bit about, during that time, you became the music director as well as the guitarist. Can you talk a little bit about that job as being the music director compared to just being the guitarist for the band?
That was sort of, there was a period where if you were named music director, that was like, okay, you're getting a promotion, and the other guys were looking at like, I don't know if I like this whole thing, I don't know if I want to be answering to Stroud, But then they saw the work I was having to do, what it was really essentially about. Then that was when Cheryl's record Wildflower came out. I think that's what it was called. And it had a lot of strings. She had used David Campbell to arrange the string, Beckstaff. And so she decided she wanted to take out David Campbell and a small string section on tour. So obviously there's a ton of work that goes along with doing that she did not have the time to do while she was promoting the record. So she asked if I would sort of be the music director, band leader, and work with David Campbell on all that kind of stuff and be the go-between, between her, David, and the band. And so when the band saw how much work I was having to do, they were like, hey, we're glad you're doing this.
Well, I find Sheryl Crow so interesting when it comes to songwriting. You talk about her as a chameleon that she is. Can you compare her songwriting to other songwriters that you've worked with? What does she do that's so different? Because it's so unique.
Yeah. The thing that I've observed is, I think maybe this is a partially a haunting thing because of the fact that she has had so many influences, but she will sometimes take songs and what they were when she first thought of them versus what they ended up coming out as, could have been an entirely different song. Where she'll go back and rehash a song. She'll go, she'll live with it for a while, and she'll go, I don't like that, and the song has morphed into something else entirely. That's one thing. But I've noticed in later years, pretty much the song I did, she comes up with, she immediately throws them down. Or there was some songs she put out recently. Sheryl worked with this producer where she gave him free reign to just treat the song as he wanted and mix it and bring in the players that he wanted to use. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she became very experimental at the same time. Over time, I think she's embraced it the same way as the rest of us. That, I'm at this period in my career where I can just write whatever I want and put out whatever I want.
Yep.
And so recently, actually, I don't know if you've heard, there's a couple of songs that we put out where she came to us as a band and said, hey, you know what? I want us to all get together in a room, same way that we're doing sort of with Close Enemies. Let's come up with some songs together. They'll be, written equally with everybody, and we'll give it a name. And so we've put out 2 songs as Sheryl Crow and The Real Lowdown.
Oh, cool.
Written that way.
Fantastic.
I wanted to talk about the 2002 album, Come On, Come On. You did have songwriting credit, I believe, on one song on that album, and that had a lot of a large collection of contributing artists to it. Is there a story from those sessions?
Yes, that was after the Globe. That was the project after Globe Sessions, and in the year between, after we had completed over a year's worth of touring behind Globe Sessions, then I went off with Don Henley. She said she wanted to take a year off, which she essentially did, although they did some one-offs and stuff. I toured with Don Henley, and then she had already begun recording up in New York at Clinton Recording Studios, assembling songs and working with various people, on that. Mm-hmm. And Cheryl was producing, and Trina Shoemaker was engineering. So I remember flying directly from my last gig with Don straight to New York to start working on that. And then some of the songs were finished in Nashville at the very end. Safe and Sound is one of my favorites from that record. But, we did a handful of the songs that I was part of at Clinton. She had, finished some others. I think she recorded Soak Up the Sun Out West, maybe. That was a song, one of those songs she wrote with Jeff Trott, her longtime collaborator. He's her principal songwriter, collaborating partner. Mm-hmm. And, that just came together from various sessions over a period of time. And Hole in My Pocket was where she was like, yeah, got any song ideas? And I brought that one in. She came up with the words for it. And when we, I had the music already written and recorded, I demoed it out. At that time, I was working in Digital Performer and brought it in. And then she came up with the lyrics and the melody, and I believe we even transferred over some of my tracks from the Digital Performer session.
Fantastic.
Well, I wanted to bring it back to Atlanta, and you had kind of talked earlier about being with Ed Roland, big Collective Soul fan myself. Can you talk a little bit about, I know I've seen Instagram pictures of you playing with the band. Can you talk a little bit about your workings with them?
Oh, yeah, man. Those Ed and those guys are all great. They're like family to me. I came to know Ed, especially over the past, I'd say, 10, 15 years, something like that. And yeah, man, he's had me come in to record on songs that, alongside, there was a period where he was writing for what he thought would be a solo record, like a Ed Roland record.
Yeah.
But I think just things really cranked back up with Collective Soul, that at least the stuff that I recorded on, he's got tons of stuff because he had a studio in his basement. And they'd have me over to the house and I'd record there. And, I think most of the stuff that I ended up recording on has come out on various Collective Soul records. Okay. So I feel like I'm sort of like the, I don't know about honorary, but I get to I get to be that sort of guest friend of theirs that gets to poke their head in every once in a while and play. And I'm envious. I got to say, every time I play with those guys, I would say this is the kind of band I want to be in.
You're like the fifth Beatle.
Yeah.
Yeah, their new album's pretty rocking.
So
they're a blast.
I got one last question for you, then we'll leave you alone for the evening. In 2001, you were part of an all-star group of artists to contribute on the Stevie Nicks Trouble in Shangri-La album. Can you talk a little bit more about that opportunity?
Yes, that was actually, as far as my part of that, it was the very first thing I did with Sheryl before I even played with her. Oh. She had already asked me to join the band. Droge had decided at that time, once he was done touring, I jumped right in with Sheryl. But the first thing was, hey, I want to bring you out to LA to record with Stevie Nicks. That was that was December of '98. They were the very first sessions for that record, if I understand correctly. And Stevie had asked Sheryl to produce it. So Sheryl brought in Ben Montench, and on drums was Matt Chamberlain. Yeah. So she brought in Matt Chamberlain, Tim Smith, my bandmate with Sheryl, that's also a longtime friend that's here in Atlanta, to play bass and some guitar here and there. He's a great guitarist as well. Brought me in, had Ben Montench on keyboards. So that was sort of the nucleus for that session. Then Sheryl would play acoustic guitar. During that time, Stevie was bringing in demos from her Buckingham Nicks days, songs that didn't get cut for that album.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And so you can imagine my mind was blown hearing these cassette tapes of songs that she and Lindsey Buckingham had done. And so during those sessions, at one point, Lindsey stopped by just to say hello and to introduce his newborn baby to Stevie. And it was the first time they'd seen each other for a while. I was like, yeah, that, just being a fly on the wall to all of that was so cool. Yeah. And then after he left, I remember Sheryl saying, hey, do you think he would, since we're working on a song that y'all did together, you think he'd be into playing on it? She goes, I don't know, let me ask. So she sends him a text, and he ended up coming right back over a few hours later. Wow. And played on it. And so he didn't even have a guitar with him. He played my Strat, and plugged into my amp, played my Strat, had the whammy. I just remember watching him with my Strat, and he was like checking out that I had the whammy bar working on it. And so then his solo was like whammied all over the place. I was like, this is freaking great, So believe me, at that time I was blown away playing with Lindsey and Ben Mont, and, then of course, Matt Chamberlain's amazing drummer.
Yeah.
Mm. Well,
you don't get those stories when you just email your tracks to your buddies.
You're exactly right. You're totally right. There you go. Case in point. And then later, I think there was some other tracks where I played 12-string on. I remember with the Dixie Chicks. That was their project. I was thinking that tied into that in some way, but I'm getting them confused back in those days. There was so much that happened all at the same time.
For sure. Well, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
You know what? No. I mean, we covered it all, and I really appreciate it. Close Enemies is what I'm just really proud of with the songs that we put out. Our album will be out in November, is the target time frame that we're working with to have it completed and out on vinyl and CD as well. And then I'm also very proud of what we're coming out with, working with Sheryl. These new songs that we have with Sheryl as Sheryl Crow and The Real Low Down. Check it out.
Very good. Well, this is how things are going to work out. Jeff, the editing wizard over here, will get all of our boogers all cleaned up and it'll make us sound like $1 million. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. And if there's anything more you need from me, man, just holler anytime. Just let me know, or I'll help put it out there and spread the word.
Well, thank you so much. Peter, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Hey, man, thank you very much. Was that all right?
Yeah.
You sounded
awesome.
great. Yeah.
I just want to say good luck with Close Enemies. Really like what I hear so far, and wish I could go to that Arcada show, but hopefully wish you luck in the future.
Well, thank you. You must be up in that area.
Yeah, it's like, what, 2 hours?
2 hours away, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, hopefully we'll cross paths at some point. Would love to have you guys come out at some point. And I understand you're talking to Tony soon, or you may have already.
Yeah.
We had him on last week.
Awesome.
So yeah,
Great.
we love the stuff so much. We want to have as many as you guys on the podcast as we possibly could.
Man, we appreciate that. That's cool, and I'm really glad you like it.
Absolutely.
Man. Very much so.
All right, man. Well, I'll be in touch.
Sounds great. Eric, Jeff, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
the grip of nights. If they ever take from